Hello everyone, good morning. Sorry, I've been late by a couple of minutes.
All right, hello everyone. Okay. Um, Before we start, any questions? Okay, well, hope everyone enjoyed their long weekend last week. Hopefully didn't forget too much of what happened in the AI world. But as things keep evolving, it's always a constant chase. I think the last thing that was big that came out was that Grok 4 was released, saying it beat a lot of benchmarks from O3, OpenAI's model and beating other models itself. But as a lot of users use it and test these new models, they're not finding that same reliability as they say they're doing on these tests, right? So just be very wary sometimes of people saying they beat certain benchmarks, but you never know if they're cherry picked. Um, you don't know how well that's done as well, right? So just think about that as well as you go and choose these new models. Although these benchmarks are being said about them, like actually use it and see it for yourself if it's actually true and compare results sometimes, and that's really what's important. Okay, everyone. So today we are on week 5. So we talked a lot about introduction of AI, how it was sort of made in history. We actually broke down what's inside these LLMs, how to use it in terms of doing actions, how to use it to ideate ideas, to create chatbots, to create agents, etc. So this week's lesson is about how can you really develop these functions in your workplace or in your business that you own. How can you be part of that movement, and what roles are there in the terms of the world of AI? In the last half, simply because we have sort of 8 individuals, what we could be doing is going through maybe take 5 to 10 minutes for everyone to talk about what are they thinking about the capstone project. Because if you remember, the point of next week, week 6, is seeing and presenting something that you built yourself using the examples that we have on Git, or something else that you decided to vibe code yourself, for example, and you want to present to the class as something that you were able to iterate. Like the point is you can go through these lessons and listen, but unless you sit down and actually like play around with it, change some functions or even change certain things, you won't really get the most out of it. So this is why I've sort of forced the week 6 capstone to see how well you want to apply something to your workplace, right? So again, we'll take that last half of class to talk about that. And if you need any help or anything like that, there is those office hours coming up this Wednesday before the Saturday class to talk about ideas if you're stuck on some code, or how to bypass those office hours on Wednesdays is for that. All right, let's get started to week 5. So for those who are sort of new to what COEs are and what's going on is that in order for a good, robust AI rollout to be happening in companies, they need to have a good center of excellence, regardless of where they are. So why would you need a center of excellence, and why is it revolutionizing industries, and what's the role of it? Imagine you're in a company that wants to use AI, and pretty much majority of them are. And they have some people who are really deep into AI by doing self-learning, other people who are not. And each company is trying to establish their own way of doing things. So you have someone building a RAG using Python on OpenAI, then you have someone else building a RAG and somewhere else, someone else doing this work. So you have everyone sort of working separately, building their own applications and trying to compete with the other departments, saying, I built this, I built that, I built this. But what's happening with the lessons learned? Maybe there's a proxy in your company that you need to bypass to call these LLMs that took someone a day and a half using support tickets to get set up and going. That someone that you don't know you have to do. Then you start your project and you have to figure it out. Spend a week trying to figure out what's going on. Then talk to your IT, set it up. If there was a way that saying, okay, before you start an AI project, you must go get those proxies, or in order to do RAG, it's best to do on this system. How much time would each department save? How much efficiency would that save? As you know, companies think of these things as your time as investments, right? Your salary divided by the total hours that you're working. And if you're wasting a week trying to do basic setups that people already have developed in the past, then you're not making the most efficient time of your company. And especially if every single department's trying to do the same thing, and that's hundreds and thousands of dollars wasted simply by not having a standardized process. So this is where a center of excellence will come in, by enhancing efficiencies, driving innovation, and providing capabilities for departments who once thought it might be impossible to do. A lot of companies were have to hire small interns, things like that, to do small routine tasks, that you would say, okay, I need someone to always constantly man the chats, or I need someone to constantly check emails, I need someone to constantly make reports, and you would hire these small interns to come do this, or you would have smaller roles to come in, but they didn't think that, okay, I could get, and in the past you would do something called RBA, remote robot processing automation, to go in there and develop macros that goes through an Excel spreadsheet, choose what you're trying to do logically, make sure everything's in the same field, do calculations that way, etc., etc. But that would cost your IT department someone who's an expert in RPA. That would require someone who knows macros. That would require something like this. So then that resource is limited because they had higher projects to value, right? So if they're working on projects that bring actually high ROI, they're mostly going to be put on those type of projects versus trying to automate a small task that someone could do at $20 an hour, right? So they're not really focused on pulling someone to that. So LLMs really open up the door, these smaller tasks, these routine tasks that you might find tedious, and really make it more efficient. So having a center of excellence to help you develop those ideas, how to do it, and then not have to have the company spend so much money doing something like that. That's where really an AI center of excellence is there to help support you and be more effective. So the role of these center of excellences serves as a centralized hubs of expertise, resources, and best practice. So you want to know how you could start an LLM project in your company. You open up an AI Center of Excellence, which has documentations, how to start a project, how to start a RAG, how to start an agent, what tickets you need to pull in, what access do you need to certain platforms, and here's what we found works best, and even sample code for you to start right away, right? And if you have questions about rolling out certain ideas or how to do things, there are key contacts from the company itself who you can reach out to and really determine how the best way to go. And that is really how you drive efficiencies by having these SOPs, these standards of practice, all set up and ready to go to help these individuals attain the best way to be more efficient and rather than wasting time. Also, the role of the Center of Excellence is, as you go out and do these initiatives, is to align strategic goals and how they implement them effectively. We know that each company has strategy that needs to be developed and missions that need to be done. So the Center of Excellence, what their role is to help push to ensure these initiatives are aligned, right? So again, maybe one of the strategic goals is to always have an easy way for customers to interact, right? Like a most effective way to interact and have clear communications with the company. How can your AI project be aligned with that strategic goal of easy communication? So again, is it increasing response time to emails that are sent to your company? Is it having a better chatbot experience? Is it this? Is it that, right? So these center of excellences will look and see what kind of projects you have and make sure they're aligned strategically, right? Rather than doing projects that could be looking fun, but they're not really aligned to what the business is trying to achieve. By consolidating efforts, AI COEs drive innovation, right? So the whole point of this is for you also to come up with ideas, and maybe there's something that you don't know. In these centers of excellences, you can also say, "Hey, I want to use some sort of AI in my department. I'm not sure what I can do." Yes, you can ask your manager or director or VP level, saying, "What are the top pain points that we need to have?" But they won't know how to solution it, right? So you might have problems and issues, but who's going to help solution this? Usually companies reach out to consultants to do look and find these solutions, but whether there's a way you don't have to reach out externally, you can keep internally building out the solutions yourself. And that's really what a role of an AI Center of Excellence helps do, is to really help build out the innovation, help out solution these things as your higher ups directly may not be as involved in AI as they know or they don't know how to solution these certain products. So this is why you need sort of these experts you can rely on and go to help for. So today's class will provide a step-by-step roadmap, how to set up an AI Center of Excellence, how to explore key steps, assessing readiness, defining objectives, how to build a team, and how to help foster innovation. And whether you're starting fresh or trying to optimize existing efforts in your company, this really is to help your organization go forward in terms of even if you have your own business or you're trying to do things, build out projects yourself, what it can really do. So I think we went through a bunch of these. So what is a Center of AI Excellence? We talked about that already before. So the dedicated team or department focus on driving AI initiatives within an organization, centralizes AI expertise and resources, and ensures that AI projects are aligned with strategic goals and executed efficiently. So again, I just want you to think this. Maybe there are in your company maybe PM offices, right, where you have product managers or um, that sort of know everything that's happening, everything that's going on, and can help you with that way, right? So just think of that as these special COEs to help you really push out the AI acceleration in the future. So I'll give you an example of how an AI center of excellence or AI factory would look like in terms of a technical sense. Although some of you may not be privy to how this is sort of set up, but if you really want to know in the sense that how do these center of excellences work in the back end, it's not simply just having a couple of experts and that's it. You need to think of infrastructure because AI is built on infrastructure. So there is five things that you need to think about when you develop your AI factory or your backend center of excellence for this to work. First is where is your data going to live, right? Is it what data centers you have, what information you have going on? The first case of when you're having these AI factories is if everyone's going to be working on a single platform, is everyone going to be working on using certain APIs? We'll go through a little bit more about AI governance because there are risks involved. Because if you're using company data and you're using APIs, those are API calls, right? And if there's a leak that happens or if there's an API that breaks down, who's going to be in charge of that, right? So the first thing that needs to sort of be done is create that groundwork of, okay, where's the data going to live? Where are these AI implementations happening? Where is all that being stored? Once you figure out your data strategy in your AI factory, the next is your infrastructure. So again, Infrastructure is about your what devices it's going to be living on. Can anyone access it on computer, phone? What's the compute you're going to leave for this? If you're not using APIs and you're using local models that you're downloading, you're going to need to have lots of vGPU RAM being sent out. Um, and that's a lot. That's a business cost as well, right? So the infrastructure of what software, the protection, networking, etc., sort of needs to be established right after you know what's going on with your data. Once you have and you know that you know, so I'm going to use an example for this one to make it a little more clear. Let's say you're going to use a cloud provider like Databricks. Databricks has Unity Catalog, which you have the data that you're being stored onto the cloud. You're choosing different types of computes for this. You can create your own clusters. You're using serverless. The role-based protection, role-based services, securities are going to be in storage. Everything's sort of protected in that sense. So next is your open ecosystems. So how are people going to be using this? So example in that one example of Databricks, there are something that are in there called AI agent builders, notebooks, etc., and be able to deploy them. That you can use these and have a model playground where you can choose LLMs, run them, check how they're doing, and check that framework. So not only you're having your data being stored securely, you know exactly what the cost and everything's being done because you have that tied to you have that tied to your compute and your storage that you should already have it negotiated. Your next is your how these people are going to be involved in choosing an LLM model because it's really difficult to say, okay, we're going to open up every single LLM and let every single person use an LLM that's available out there because there's a cost, right? So every single time you use an LLM, there's a cost associated with it. So you should be negotiating with these companies what kind of LLMs can be available and at what cost, right? And these models that should be available to each user should be locked in these model cases that you have in here and also and be able to be served in any application that you need to be having. Once you sort of have that groundwork of, okay, I have a storage, I have the compute, I have my LLM models, I have where they can build, and then you can go and think about your services. Okay, so now that you have that, who's going to be using it? Is going to be really open to everyone? Are we going to open up a few things for certain individuals? You need to think about the strategy you're really trying to achieve with having an AI going on, right? So again, we talked about aligning to your business strategy and only have AI workflows that are part of the mission of your company's happening of your company. Which data is going to be available for them to use? The platform who has access to your data as well. What use cases are seem to be high priority and how you operate and scale, right? So you sort of build that out in the sense that you now have that background and platform layer for everyone to use. And then you look at finally your use cases. So there's a bunch of different use cases you can do. And how this should be looking at again in two different ways. One is your strategy, and two is ROI. And that's something that you need to think about as well. And I think the biggest one in business is the ROI of you doing and building something like this. So if you're working on a project that's only going to benefit you, and it can save you 1 hour a week, let's say, of doing a project or working on something, that seems really efficient for you. But let's say it takes about 6 weeks, 8 weeks for you to develop this, right? So in that 6, 8 weeks for you to develop your AI project that helps you save you 1 hour a week, that's only about 52 hours you saved, but you already spent over 300 or 400 or 500 hours building something to save you 1 hour a week when you spent 6 weeks building it. So really to get to your true ROI would take, let's say 4 or 5 years, and by that time in 5 years, that's already done and something else already automated that process. So really, is it really worth you spending that time solving or trying to save you 1 hour a day in terms of business cost in that sense, right? So I want you to think about how these managers, how the VPs, people look at this when you're developing something with AI. because it's not as easy as software engineering, because in software engineering you build out these codes that you know that say if a 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. We know that for sure it's going to happen. You can easily build unit tests, easily build this stuff out. But with LLMs, if you say 1 plus 1 is equal to 2, and then you write, well, that's actually 3. Like, sorry, I'm right. It's not going to give you consistent deterministic answers every single time. So there's way more iterations, way more guardrails in place you need to build out rather than typical software engineering. So it does take more time to build these use cases out. It takes more time to develop these programs because you need really good evaluation systems in comparison to just running a unit test and then that's it. AI in general does require a lot more validation than any other code right now that's out there to do. So again, these use cases will be run by ROI and by strategy. So just think about that when you decide a use case that you want to do, and is it really bringing the necessary ROI? Is it really bringing this up? Because that's the use case that you need to bring to your manager, you need to bring to your VP or to your director of why you should be implementing something and why it should be, how we should be using that as well. So I really get deeper into that in Gen AI 102. Gen AI 102 is AI for business. I go through how to develop a business case for your boss in terms of cost, everything, optimization, strategy, etc. And we go through that each one and how to and really build out an AI solution and what that would take. Okay, so going back to the center of excellence. Now that you sort of built out your framework, you have your platform, you have everything set up. That's sort of your where you are right now, right? So in order for you to continue and for you to go in and understand how a bit more how this center of excellence could be more successful, it's important to do a readiness assessment. You need to assess what are current AI initiatives, tools, and expertise, and understand the starting point of your AI journey. So again, going back and doing maybe it's a survey from your for your company, asking how many are using AI tools in the workplace, how many actually built out these AI tools, and what kind of tools are they building out, AI agents, chatbots, etc. And really trying to see, okay, there's 50 people in the company who build out chatbots, but they're all doing it in different platforms. Why, right? Or maybe there's not. Maybe there's only 6 people in a 20,000 people company that are actually working on AI initiatives. So is your company really ready to take on AI initiatives if only so little people are actually working on AI capabilities? This really helps you understand where's your starting point of your journey. Again, next is identify gaps and opportunities where AI can add the most value. So again, going back to the case studies, what are the top gaps and what are the top problems happening in your companies that you can figure out what you can add more value using AI to solve? And going back to doing this by recognizing gaps in skills, technology, and processes. Maybe someone has 3 juniors under him working two of those jobs can be really automated by having a chatbot or having those 2 regs. Like, yes, it could be that there's not enough time or technology with processes, but what are these opportunities that could be really done with these AI in terms of not only strategic goals, but also headcounts, cost effectiveness, etc. In order for this to be really successful, you need to have key stakeholders and understand their needs and expectations. So as much as you have a great idea and as much as you want to push forward a center of excellence, if you don't have stakeholder buy-in, they're not really gonna push and budge forward. So let's say you're having a center of excellence, you identify the gaps, very few people are using AI. So you said, okay, I'm going to go and do AI lesson learns, AI demos for everyone to get excited to work around. So you invite certain departments to join, but because you didn't reach out to the director, you didn't reach out to the VP of those departments, nothing like that, you see very low engagements. No one's really showing up to these meetings, not really getting that buy-in. It's because, again, you don't have key stakeholders understanding why their employees need to be joining this or what they're expected to do when they join these meetings. there needs to be clear communication and clear stakeholder communication of what's happening and why it's important for them to join. And the whole point of this is to build support and alignment across the organization. You don't want to do all this work and then in the end the VP thinks he knows more than you, or you think this initiative isn't good, and then they start building their own rags and systems again separately on a separate system, simply because there is no alignment, there's no understanding of what's happening. So again, just be very careful. And again, the most key part, I think, in any business is always that key stakeholder engagement and ensuring that everyone's sort of aligned to what's happening. So what should your objectives be as you start building this out? Again, identify your short-term goals. Think about pilot projects or quick wins. We called, I think last year, a lot of when I still work consultancy, we call them the wave of POCs. I think there was over millions of POCs being developed from different companies, just trying to see is there any real value in AI helping these things out. And you have to also, most important part, as you do these POCs, MVPs, whatever you're doing, to show value of these AI initiatives, is also to set targets to demonstrate early success. It's not enough just to say, we're going to do these POCs. But you need to decide, okay, well, what's the target you need to do to demonstrate? Can it really automate 1,000 messages at the time? Can it really answer 1,000 messages at a time? What is the accuracy rate on this? You need to sort of set these targets and say, if we don't achieve these targets, we need to drop this initiative and go to the next one. And because again, the whole point of POC is to learn quickly and fail fast, and not spend all this money developing a product that you don't know it's going to exist. As you develop these short-term goals, you need to think about your long-term goals as well. What is really how you're tying AI to strategic objectives, how you're going to scale it, the software, or how you're going to develop new AI-driven products in the company. So you align with your organization's vision and also figure out what's happening in the market. So establish metrics to measure success, ROI, project completion rates, and use KPIs to inform decision making. And again, I won't stress enough, again, is as most people know, is communication is key for these AI projects. Everyone's really excited about them. They want to use AI, but they don't know how, right? So this is where you need to be communicating with these stakeholders, how you're using AI and how this is happening. And the communication is really key for that stakeholder alignment and stakeholder buy-in. So what I have here is a chart from Gartner in 2024 of really small problems that people are now having issues with that they think that LLMs can really have an impact on. So this is a quadrant of showing where to really prioritize your efforts. So again, this graph allows organizations who are planning to set up Gen AI COEs to prioritize efforts on strategic opportunities, impactful initiatives, and manage complex challenges. So you have high impact initiatives, growth opportunities, routine maintenance, and complex challenges. So again, when you look at this graph and you're like, okay, well, my company, if you were to go and grab a bunch of you set up this graph, which one is really high impact initiatives that you could really go in and do fast, right? So example, online user experience could be done by using LLMs to really help understand a little bit more. Demand forecasting, LLMs, like I said before, aren't mathematical models. So how can that really help demand forecasting? You need to think about those things. Answering customer queries, yes. Can re generate reports, yes. Can enter data, yes. Can help with customer satisfaction, understanding sentiment analysis, yeah. Can do QA, yes. Employee engagement. So you can see a majority of these high impact initiatives can be automated with AI. Things that are called growth opportunities are things that could be happening next that are not really as high impact, but could have a good, decent impact on your company if worked on. And you know that some of these can be then be better made. Anything with routine maintenance, help with inconsistent data entries, look lack of automation in procurements, etc. what are ways that can really solution and look at it that way, right? And also complex challenges. These are things that it's really complex, not as easy just throwing an LLM and calling it a day. You need to think about how doing integrations in CRM systems, there's a cost associated with that. What modules are available, is those modules available in your CRM systems really solving issues or just a cheap sale from the system sales that you guys have? So again, all that analysis needs to be looked at and look at how LLMs or AI can really use to solve those type of issues. So you now have your strategy, you have your use cases, you have the infrastructure. So who can really drive these initiatives? What's really the top roles that are really going to go and actually make the solution what it is? So I gave an example of a team that you would sort of grab and implement of how this would work. So again, I'll go through each one and understand what are the different names, what they do, and how they really help and contribute to a team to be successful. So first is the AI architect, as you can see in the picture. An AI architect who's sort of leading the team knows the infrastructure that you sort of developed, right? So it knows exactly if you're using AWS, if you're using Azure, or using Databricks, or using any type of software that you're using, how can that goal that you're building out, that you're developing, is being solutioned. So this A architect will think of security as well, authorization, how that connects to the front end. This A architect will only help build out the framework. If you're using agentic modeling, the AI architect will help determine which is the best framework to use for your business case. Is it lane graph? Is it agent to agent? Do you need MCP servers, etc.? This AI architect aligns the AI project with the business goals, identify opportunities for AI adoption, and understand the landscape, right? So this AI architect is pretty much designing the blueprint of how this is working. Once the AI architect is sort of developed and solution it, they would usually work with the AI engineer to ensure that the blueprint does work and the blueprint is functioning properly. The difference between a data scientist and AI engineer are pretty much domain specific information. For example, a data scientist usually comes as well as an engineer from like a statistical background. They have worked with machine learning models. They understand how to read business initiatives and transform them into actual modeling in terms of developing predictive modelings, things like this. But they're not focused as an AI engineer of setting up guardrails, setting up prompting techniques. AI engineer has a little bit more experience working with different models such as PyTorch and things like this in the sense that it's looking at ways how to optimize local models, how to evaluate them using different types of evaluations rather than the typical evaluations you would do in a predictive modeling. So, like a data scientist who has AI experience could be out there. So I'm not turning all those down, but in the sense that someone who considers them an AI engineer would have a little bit more experience with really developing these things. Usually, data scientists who transition to AI engineers have very little experience getting. They're trying to get in their feet wet. They're trying to get in there, but when you're trying to interview and you're trying to get a project up right away, and you say you only have 6 weeks to complete, you rather not have a data scientist just join the team and just say call it a day and say this data scientist will be the one developing it. You would probably want someone who has a little bit more experience, who already knows how to develop AI agents, who already know that framework, who already have experience coming in, rather than someone just trying to attempt to build something out. Because again, if you're trying to do a quick project, you're trying to develop something really fast, the AI, like the data scientists wouldn't be able to do that because again, they'll be doing a lot more experimenting, understanding, okay, they told me to use this framework. How does this framework work? How do I do this evaluation? So again, you probably need someone who has done that in the past, right? So that's why I'm saying you would, and if you're doing quick work, pull in an AI engineer. But if you don't have AI engineers in your company, you can have data scientists come in and be able to help you out with those with those problems. But again, you need to leave room and think about how they need to have time to experiment, understand it, and know how to deal with those issues. Next is also an important part is the business needs, and I think this is something that I see a lot of companies sometimes fail to do. I've seen companies who are like, okay, I need to build this project out. I'm thinking about this AI project that does this and does that. That's great. Okay, guys, build this out. Have to blueprint it out for us. Think of the framework and design it. So I was thinking of a company that did this, and they wanted to use the latest um, AI agent experience from a certain company as well. So they built it out. The AI engineer and data scientists worked together. They did the evaluations. And when they did the evaluations on their POC, they got really high accuracy scores, like 95, 96%. They're like, okay, we're doing great. We're doing awesome. And then it went live on their MVP. And in their MVP, it was completely bonkers. They were getting complete opposite responses that the model was going. They were saying, well, how is this like why is this happening? Like in our training sets and our evals, we looked at it, we created our own evaluations, like why is this happening? And the project actually went in red, and there was a lot of issues with it. But what the company didn't do is they looked at this as strategically, as they looked at this only like a software engineering problem, and rather than and not actually pulling in the people they need. So until they actually brought in a business me who actually sat down and said, "Whoa, guys, like your training set is somewhat correct, but you're forgetting all these nuances. You're forgetting about that when customers ask for this, you need to think about this." Without that business context, it doesn't matter how smart your AI engineer is, doesn't matter how smart your data scientist is. If there's no business me helping on the project, overlooking it, understanding it, actually giving their input, then you won't have a successful project because you won't really understand what's really required. You're not there working on let's say customer service field day to day to understand that this all these people, 1,000 people ask the same question and they always want this type of response. Not the response that you think that people would want, but what response that people actually want. So without a business me guiding you and helping you understand that as much as you develop your own models evaluations, there is no business me to help you understand it. You won't be successful. And think about this as a business as well, right? Let's say you want to open your own AI business and you thought of this really cool idea, and you're like, okay, I'm really excited about this. And you start developing, you spent all this money onto it, and then you go out and you start trying to sell it, but then no one's buying it. So then you're trying to like, well, what's going on? I thought of a really great idea. Like I spent thousands and thousands of dollars in this AI idea, this company. Why isn't it selling? Because it comes down to, well, customers don't really want it, or don't customers don't really need it because you never listen to them. So unless you hear like from a customer that's actually solving a problem that they have or something that's really comfortable, it doesn't matter how cool your idea is. If someone doesn't find it useful, if someone for them doesn't find value in what you're building, then no one's going to buy what you have. So that's really where a business me would come in, who works with that sort of type of information and really dictates what people are looking for, what are the needs, what's really the challenges that's faced that does that final sell, right? So again, that's super important to have these people with this business context as you develop these cool ideas, as you develop these things, that there is a business need to validate the data that you're doing, or even when you're journeying your own business idea, having someone to talk to that has industry experience in developing things like that as well will solve you a lot of money and will solve you a lot of problems before you even start, right? So think about that as well as you develop into this. So of course, and in the end, you need to have also a project manager to be on top of the project. As much as you're a really good engineer, business me, and data scientist and architect, if you don't have someone ensuring that it's being delivered timely or there's a budget conscious delivery, that needs to happen. And also, who's communicating to stakeholders, who's building the demos, who's doing this, who's doing that. This project manager has to be on top of the project, ensuring that everyone stays in line and you're actually getting to a final finish line because it's really easy to get into the weeds when you're developing an AI project because like, oh, cool, I can develop this, or cool, I can develop this. And you can get really deep into it and say, okay, well, I need to develop all this to be successful. Like, no, you only have 6 weeks. Choose the top five features you want to implement, and then from those top five, implement them, and that's it, right? You sort of need those project managers to be on top of that project to ensure that everyone stays focused, and also on top of what's happening. As the whole point of this is that as AI is really coming in, AI is not cheap. I'm sure the AI architect salary is not cheap. AI engineer salary is not cheap either. Neither the data scientist. So as you develop this 6 weeks project and you're not on top of it, you don't have a project manager guiding them, 6 weeks can quickly develop to 3 months, can develop to 6 months. Then you have scope creep, and then guess what? You spent your whole entire budget on salaries and nothing on actual product being delivered. And this is why it's important to have a project manager or PM overviewing, ensuring that everything's staying up to budget and hitting those timelines. And that's really important. So, in order for you to have something that's really successful in the sense, in a business sense, you sort of implement a team that's PM, someone who can do the blueprints, the AI engineer to develop, data scientists working the business team to do evaluations, and also helping the AI engineer build. As you have this team working together, and sort of like that in that sense, you're setting up your team for success. Because you're not guessing what the business wants, you're not having someone guessing what framework to use. You don't how you're ensuring security, etc. But in terms of core AI backend development, this would sort of be the team. But of course, like you obviously need a dev team, a DevOps team if you're doing this in terms of implementing something that's a pipeline. If you want to build something on the front end, you would need a front end team, like it's completely separate from this. But this is only in terms of having someone to help actually build out projects. This will sort of be your core team. And also, when you're having a center of excellence, this team would be really helpful as well. Your AI architect can really help you design and say, hey, I want to build something out for my department. What can I do? And an architect will sit down and help you say, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that, you do this, right? And let's say you need to ask up, okay, wait, what framework should I use? What kind of things, experiments can I do? You can reach out to the AI engineer or data scientist to really sit down with you and actually build out, okay, well, you need to develop this. We have something very similar, use this instead. And then you have a business me that can actually also help you step in and say, okay, well, when applying to business, use this, use this, use this, right? And then again, the PM can also help you keep yourself involved and your team involved of how you're delivering those strategic timelines as well. So in the center of excellence, you can have these individuals as SMEs, as champions for your company that really go and really help everyone. And again, um, they don't have to be like separately. They can be from different departments, right? So you can have a architect champion who's really good, but he's in the finance department, or you can have an AI engineer that's in IT that's really good, but he's just to be the champion, right? He doesn't have to be on the same departments. You can have these teams that you can assemble yourselves from all over the company, but these people are your champions in your COE that's really going to help everyone else achieve the best results. Okay, so like I said before, there's not only it's important to sort of have your data background, developing POCs, and having a team, you should in your COE, you should be really thinking about how you're going to establish governance, how you're going to establish these frameworks. So not only is it enough just to have this in your AI governance, you need to have sort of a leadership connection. Like I said before, you need to have key stakeholders. So you can choose someone, maybe someone who's a director or VP level, to sort of be the leader or steering committee of your COE. This VP or this person who's really high up in the company should be doing this will be someone that people can listen to, some people that can will align to, And you can book monthly meetings, right? So again, the whole point of having center of excellence is also to steer strategic goals. So maybe a monthly meeting with this VP to with these other individuals um, could really help and make that influence of saying, hey, how's your department aligning with the goals? Are you guys using AI to do this? How can you really optimize your efficiencies? And that steering committee can always keep in track of what's happening, what are the top priority, what are the top use cases, and really give that good communication to this. Next is you have to also have executive sponsorship. So again, engage senior executives to champion the AI COE, right? So it's not just enough just to have one. You need to get executive sponsorship to really push it out through emails, communications, town halls, etc., to really show where you really are in that term of sense, right? Another framework you need to think about as you develop this is how to ensure that everyone in the company is addressing bias, fairness, transparency, and developing this, right? Ensure responsible AI development and deployment. We looked at that in week two. How do we ensure that when they're doing the prompts, they're not biasing the model or they're using biased data to fine-tune an LLM model as well? These are ethical guidelines that you, as a center of excellence, need to establish for everyone as they're developing these tools to use. And of course, there's data governance, which models what kind of information can be sent to these models, what business information should not be ever sent to an LLM, or could be sent to an LLM, but in a closed LLM that has no connection to the internet, how those could be different used as well, right? So again, how to standardize these processes. So it's not only enough to have a team, not only enough to develop these policies, not only enough to have infrastructure, you need to have a governance and framework in order to be successful to develop these things. So what are those steering committees look like and what are those alignments look like in that type of sense? So here I'll talk about five main keys of developing a successful AI governance strategy. So an example of this was recent increased government regulations and data privacy has played a part in AI governance to the front form of disclosures. So there's companies in the US that have started using AI to sort of analyze and review information of their customers. Some of them which are in the US, or some of them which are not. And some of them might be in Europe, you might have a global company. But because you didn't have a proper privacy policy, you didn't have proper masking in place on the back end when you read an LLM chatbot from the front end, um, there has been more than $126 million in fines to these companies because GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulatory Office, has fined these companies for not doing their due diligence and not writing a policy statement, letting these individuals in Europe know when their information is being collected, or because they didn't mask the data. Maybe let's say you have a chatbot open and your chatbot's really simple. It's only asking about information about ordering pizza, for example, but you left it open to be used worldwide and someone decided to put the credit card information in and they're from Europe. So GDPR was like, well, this website's available online and it's been used in Europe. So what are you doing to protect your customers' information? And they're finding that you're not masking data, not finding that you're doing your due diligence on your chatbot. That is GDPR fines and go from there. Even in California, the California Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA, was enforced in 2020, which carries fines of 2,500 per violation or up to 8,000 for intentional violation plus damages. So you're not protecting your customer data, specifically even in different states, not even have to go across Europe. There could be fines. And let's say your chatbot receives 1,000 people per visit, and so almost close to 5,000 each, right? So you could be costing your company $50,000 per day on fines, which can come to millions of dollars over a month. And that's even before you get audited, right? Could be 15 million, up to $20 million over the year if you're not careful, ensuring you have a good AI risk governance and ensuring you don't have the proper things in place. So as much as AI seems enticing, unless you have this AI governance strategy in place, um, you're really going to set your company up for failure and into fines and legal battles. So companies are now starting to realize that data governance have never really been established in a way to handle ML or required in the age of AI and what the new requirements are coming in. So what are top ways you can think of enhancing this and ensuring that everyone is using this is one is have a top-down and bottoms-up strategy. Every AI governance program needs executive sponsorship as well. So it's not only good enough to have the COE, you need to also have executive sponsorship on AI governance and AI governance safety. And that's always really important to think about. Two, a balance between governance and enablement. Governance should be a blocker to innovation, rather it should be enabled to support it, right? Some people might say, whoa, 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 I don't want to build something out in public anymore because my team can get fined and I'm not doing the proper regulations. So instead of building that fear mongering of what's happening, but maybe have support, maybe have legal teams review what's okay, what's not okay, have a legal team of an AI risk management team that looks at certain things that are going to be in public and have them do a full review of it before it gets done. So to ensure that there's no fear mongering, it's like, okay, well, I'm building this project, but it has to be approved by this committee, right? So you have a committee that approves it based off risks. Okay, next one is quality. Standards of quality applied to software development needs to be reapplied to machine learning models. So again, ensure that you have people going in. If you're doing a PI masking, although you have it already set up, who's evaluating that? Who's doing unit tests on your PI mask? Is it really hitting all the edge cases that it needs to be doing? Just having a good standard of quality when you're running your code can really also help you save money next. Okay, next is model management. So again, this may not apply for AI, but example like in typical ML models, when you build something predictive, could be for credit card risk or credit card scores or forecasting. Something usually what happens to these models is something called model drift. As you receive more real world data coming to your machine learning models, the original model that was sort of developed becomes worse and worse and worse and worse simply because you're not, it's getting new data. There could be a new column added to your data set. The demographics have changed since the last couple of years. So because all of these changes, your model drifts and drifts and drifts. And if you don't have a good drift catch, or you're not ensuring that the model is actually being looked at in that terms of sense, and then you are setting up your company for failure because it won't have achieved the same success. So again, you have a good model management, good continuous monitoring. Help always go back and refresh the model. Do more tests to ensure that the model is still meeting the needs of the business, right? So ensure that in your AI governance, you have something that looks at good model management as part of that balance. And next is transparency and responsible AI. So again, it goes back to ensuring that everyone knows that if you are capturing information from them, that you're being very transparent at the beginning, saying this data will be captured for privacy and quality content, or you have a privacy in place that says, please delete after 4, 5, 6 months. Any customer data come from the chatbot, maybe that's something from GDPR that says you can't retain customer data for more than a year. So you need to have that data information being collected, deleted, and um, you should be able to show that you have those policies in places and retention policies in place to make sure that everything's transparent and responsible. So these are just top five, and there's a lot more. Like AI governance and risk could be its whole class in itself. But again, I just want to show you that as you go into AI, it's not simply just building models. There is a back into it. If you're really into IT and you're really into infrastructure, maybe you should think about going into how AI infrastructure is built out and who's making those decisions and how do they get the best model in place. Or if you're really into building AI models, maybe the AI engineer role is what you should be looking for in terms of your next career move, understanding things are. Or if let's say you already have a really good grasp on AI engineering, maybe the AI architect role should be something that you're really more interested for. Instead of building something out, you can sort of plan it out, look at the top references, know about what security, and go from there, right? So there are different pathways, even AI risk. A lot of companies are now hiring directors of AI risk to do these governances. There's AI risk managers now, and these people are doing exactly what this slide is saying. They're looking at the risk of developing these models and ensuring that the compliance is up to date and and handling everything we're looking at that way. Okay, so going back to the whole tech stack. We're gonna get a little deeper into understanding what that tech stack should look like, and what you should be having, like I said before, on that back end. So when you go back to the data, understanding where are you having it? Is it cloud? Is it on premise? And what are the pros and cons? You need to think about that, right? If a company has super government documents, right? I doubt it's going to be on an open. I doubt it's going to be on Microsoft Azure, and open up for anyone could be using, right? This is really going to be based off your business needs and what's available and what can be done in terms of privacy or not privacy use. Next is if you are in charge now, next it's like, you know what? I want VJ to be in charge of finding out what technology stack we should be using. And I need to know what we should be using for a company, right? So you need to think about, okay, what platform has capability of using AWS or Google Cloud or Azure, or what can be done that has simple solutions that can be implemented quickly, right? You don't want to be building out your own AI platform unless it's really necessary, and something's already built out and it doesn't have to cost your company hundreds of millions of dollars to develop. You should be looking at cost effectiveness. There are models that are something else pay-as-you-go models. There's also something called throughput models. So instead of using pay-per-token models, you can play per throughputs, which are you pay like a fixed cost every month with throughput models, and anyone can use as API as much as they can and much as they want, and it will never be slow. But if you use pay per token, you only pay for what people use, right? And which is effectively a lot more cheaper than the throughput in that sense. So again, you need to think about which cloud provider has the most LLMs that your company would need. What's really giving you the cost benefit? Do they have pay-as-you-go tokens, pay per tokens? Do they have throughput models, etc.? If you're a global company, let's say my last company I had to do this was global accessibility. We were launching GCP in Canada, but we had companies in Mexico, we had companies in Peru, we had companies on different areas. So in order for us to enable a Google Cloud platform on these different countries, they all had to go through a privacy review per country based off legal laws, and understanding what can be available and what shouldn't be accessible for each one. So as much as I wanted to enable GCP and have certain platform capabilities for each region, um, there's certain legal laws that will prevent you to have certain capabilities on certain countries to be able to do things versus not capable to do things. And also goes back to the AI governance. Let's say in a country like Peru, that you have to delete data every 3 years of a customer that that's not a paying customer, could be only 2 years in another country, right? So each country will have its own regulatory laws and governance that if you're thinking about launching something like an AI platform, you need to go through the proper due diligence of enabling these things. Again, you need something that has control and security. One of the biggest things that a lot of these providers don't have is transparency and how much tokens are being used. So let's say you enabled API on Microsoft Azure, right? Or AWS. These people are very notorious for for doing this, and they don't give you real time monitoring in terms of using paper token, right? They'll give you an update after an hour or half hour of what's happening in terms of your token usage and payments. So when you're doing this, it could be a huge spike. There could be people, it could be a huge surge of people already deciding to use your LLM in your company. If you don't have the proper control and security and maybe a cost cap per person, you could be seeing tens and thousands of dollars of extra purchasing that you didn't think you'd be expending because you didn't have the proper security cap models um, based off that, right? So again, it'd be very, you think about when you're doing these innovations and you're in charge of the infrastructure, think about how you're going to have these controls in place. And that should be part of your governance model. Performance, we talked about having different clusters. If you're having your own localized models. Like, so why would you want to use a localized model versus an API? With an API, you don't need a GPU. You don't need strong software. You don't need to be using any graphic models to run your model. We saw that running on your computer using VS Code, using Google Colab, all we do is API calls and that's it. Like we're good. Like we don't have to spend like the extra money on calling it. But when you're trying to run something local, that requires something like that, one thing you most people don't understand is that these models that they're interacting with are not the small 8 billion parameter models or 4 billion parameter models. These are 600 billion parameter models. These are 700 billion parameter models, and they're running on the company's GPUs of six A1 like A100s cards and 8 or 20 or 30 cards, graphic cards all set up in the back end to be able to support everyone in a fast and a super fast and efficient way. So as you're running, you're like, oh, these APIs are answering really, really fast. Like it's really great. But then when you try to put it on one graphics card, it's taking you more than 12 minutes to get one response. And you're like, whoa, why is that happening? And you're spending over $30 an hour renting a GPU virtually for this to happen. And then you're like, okay, well, I need to get two graphics cards, or maybe I need to get three. I need to evenly dispose of the weight. And then the cost quickly adds up because now you're adding two, three, four different graphics cards to host one of these super large models and be able to inference them at a really fast time. And if you want to do this for your company, then you have to purchase your own graphics card and be able to do that yourself, right? So when you're trying to do something that's really big, think about this and think about how you can do this for local storage. If your company already has a graphics card and they're free to use, then you just have to think about the electricity cost that comes with using this graphics card as well. There are ways you have to always improve them, and there's always a cost to it. So again, when you look about this, there's different ways of determining which one's the best way. And again, the question is, it depends on your business. It always depends on what needs to be protected, what doesn't need to be protected. And then also choosing the right stack. Does your AI platform have ways easy to create models, not create models? Does it contain PyTorch? Does it have some different ways to do really fast prototyping? Maybe your company uses terabytes of data. Do you have the right Spark, or you're using Hadoop to do BigQuery of the data, etc., right? So there are different ways to handle looking at your data, but again, when you're thinking about this, all this thought process of how this is going to be happening needs to be part of that COE experience because your job is not only to enable people to develop AI, but also part of your part of sure it's any strategic initiative is to lower the cost and ensure you're using the optimal software for your users. So there are different models you can do, but usually on a Gen AI stack, going back, we're zooming in now and to that third part called the software layer on the IBM framework, is that you should have some infrastructure software for you to sort of build out your models. So let's say you want to do fine tuning on your model. So you want to grab an LLM and fine tune it, which means to train your own model. Then you need to have something that's able to train a model. NVIDIA does this Mosaic AI, Mosaic ML, which is now called Mosaic AI, which Databricks bought it. Model, CoreWeave, Together AI, example. These are infrastructure hardwares that can be done to fine tune your models in a really easier way. Once you have sort of an infrastructure that hosts and be able to tune your models, then you have to choose which foundational models again are you using. So if you're using OpenAI, are you using Claude, are you using Cohere, are you using any other ones, right? What are those foundational models that you're going to be using for your company? Next is where the databases are storing. If you're going to be doing RAG, right, you need to have something that has vector store database. So I would say 2 years ago, very few providers actually had vector store databases, vector DBs in there. Just recently, within the last 6 months, there's now vector store databases enabled on AWS, Azure, these different big cloud providers. But before, you had to choose something else, for example, Quadrant, Pinecone, LensDB, BV8 as different examples of different websites that had VectorDB stores that you could use and run, and that was really trying to optimize your time. Again, what's going to be like what framework are going to be using it? Hugging Face allows you to download local models and run it on their local Python files as well. LangChain is another one that helps you develop frameworks on LangGraph, etc. And these are just different names, examples that you would use to help you build out your framework. Front-end hosting that I put on for sale, but you can also find a way how to host your front-end app, right? So the whole point of an AI product is not simply just the back end. When you think of ChatGPT, you think of the ChatGPT interface, right? When you think of Claude, you think of the Claude interface. It's about the user experience. So as much as how smart you have your model and you have an LLM working on the back end, you need to think about how that front end is being hosted. You need to think about how the user will interact because how they interact with your model will really drive engagement. And as much as your model is smart and good, and if it has a crappy front end that's not saving their work, it's not restoring their history, it's not really intuitive, they can't really work with it, then most people will just say this is garbage. I'd rather just use ChatGPT and leave the whatever AI stack you created on the side, right? So just make sure that you remember that AI in itself is the product of how you're going to be using it. So a lot of people say, well, like AI is just most companies will fail because they're just wrappers around LLMs. But that's exactly what these OpenAI people are doing. That's what Perplexity is doing. They're building these websites. They're building out these and I would say like the Perplexity, for example, is building out something that said that we're really good at searching things on the internet, but they're pretty much a wrapper around OpenAI LLMs, they're a wrapper around Claude LLMs, any other LLMs they have, and they're just using these LLMs to do API calls in the background and adding additional software on top. And now they're a billion-dollar company, right? Well, I think multi-million, maybe not a billion, but multi-million dollar company. But they're basically just a wrapper, right? They're just wrapping a front-end software, and they're being really successful on it because they're able to deliver a really great experience. Some people still find it easier to look up something on Perplexity online and using LLM to help them search than going to OpenAI and using that search, right? So this is why Perplexity is still around because they're able to do that. So think about that when you're developing your own LLM initiatives. How easy is it? How engaging is it? And really, when you're developing something, it's not about how fast you do it, it's the quality of work you do in that front end, where really will drive success in your company of the LM initiatives. So now there's something called there's something called ML ops, which was machine learning operations of how you would grab a model, you would do a CI/CD pipelines, you would then be able to train it, load it, be able to then do evaluations on it. So you have to do the same thing for LLMs. We call those LLM ops so that's really hard because different people call it AI ops, LLM ops. There's such different names for it. But you should have someone overviewing when you're developing these models, how the model's being trained, how you're valuing the model, how you're fine-tuning these model, how you're serving it, how you're deploying it. That's all part now of the LLM ops use case. So again, as you think about your career and you're developing things, LLM ops is something that's huge because as I'm sure ML ops is huge itself in terms of data science world. LLM operations as well is also something you need to think about that they have. So there are different ways of doing it and looking at it. So again, this is example of a stack at Xenon Stack that they have, what they look at and what they use on terms of their AIT side. But again, the whole point of this slide here is to think about once you get into development and you're going to that software side of your factory, you need to be thinking about where your data is being stored, what foundation models you're going to bring in, what software you're using, how you can develop that front end, how your models can be fine-tuned, served, and deployed. All that needs to be thought about in the process. It's simply just not enough simply in terms of business. Like, hey, I developed something on my computer, and that's it, right? No, like you need to think about, okay, well, how did you evaluate this? What are the criteria? How are you going to serve this model? How are you going to deploy this model? How's this going to connect to the front end? Where's your data being stored? Is there any biases in your data? There is a lot more into doing something than simply just developing on something on code, which may be good just simply for a POC, but it needs to go to this next step when you develop something in sort of an MVP stage. So, and in terms of a framework, how does this look like, right? So again, this going back to the PM role. In this PM role, you need to think about how this is sort of different types of frameworks that you need to think about of how to use this. So again, I'll talk about quickly about the AI project lifecycle. When you look at and designing something for AI, you need to think about how to do this. So first, look how you develop models. So what are you trying to do for the model? Like what model, first of all, what model are you going to use? What are you trying to develop? Whatever it is. Once you sort of develop the model, you have to prepare for production, deploy it to a test environment of the changes that you've done for your model. You need to validate this and then deploy to production and then monitor it, right? So again, there could be different ways of finding out what's happening, but again, once you create something, design it, validate, and deploy and monitor, in this part of this monitor, it could be that your evaluations are as much as you validated before are not doing as good. So because they're not doing good, you go back and iterate. You choose a different model, you train it separately, and then you go back to the same way of prepare for production, deploy it, validate, do test, and go back in. So again, the designing, like I said before, if you were to build something on your computer, it's simply just on developing the models. You're just testing it, and that's it. But then you need to automate and do some how are you gonna launch that to an API, and how people are gonna communicate with your model. Once your people have found a way to communicate with your model, you need to then automate that and how you can see how that works and deploys to production to a front end system. So again, number one is to ideate and prioritize, generate and evaluate ideas based off impact and feasibility, and then prioritize the projects aligning with strategic goals. So what are ways that you should be using AI for in terms of PM role? You should be doing some Scrum, sprint planning, daily stand-up sprint reviews. This is one I usually work with in different companies when we're doing AI systems. We usually have daily stand-ups daily or every other day to show what blockers we're running into, what we have developed, ensuring that we're sort of on the same wave. Like, hey, actually, the AI is actually doing really bad on here. We need to pivot immediately, right? Rather than waiting 6 weeks at the end of a waterfall project and saying, well, I didn't do anything because the model wasn't good enough. So ensuring that you have these sprints, you have these daily stand-ups, and you're sure you're doing everything in terms of reviewing what's happening in terms of an agile methodology. So again, you as part of the software as well, do a Kanban, support your tickets, and also look at your CI/CD pipelines. So for those who are new to that terminology, CI/CD pipelines, continuous improvement, continuous deployment, is be actually developed to package how to grab your model, package it, and serve it to the front end. And then this serving of this front end will then be able to then use the serve the model towards it, right? So it's actually a whole DevOps operation when you think of CI/CD pipelines because the DevOps team helps package your model for you and serve it to to wherever you're hosting it to be. So so obviously the whole point of this was saying that like there is more than just having people just develop an AI project. You need to think about how to actually productionalize this after you're done and what's necessary. So, what are some challenges in this type of methodologies? Sometimes it's hard to integrate AI with existing systems. Maybe there might be limitations. Two, always ensure that data privacy and security. We talked about that in the risk management. If you don't have data policies in places, or you're not scrubbing or masking data, that could be a big issue. Third is addressing ethical considerations. As the people prompt, whoever's doing this, are you prompting in a most ethical and unbiased way? Four, overcoming resistance to change. A lot of people don't like using AI. They just think it's garbage. Like this is AI. Well, the biggest terminology I've seen, this is just AI slop, right? And a lot of people who say that have used ChatGPT once. They didn't know about context engineering. They didn't know how to activate nodes. They don't know how to really prompt engineer to get the best responses. So they simply just want to ask ChatGPT, well, plan me out this project, right? And going back to week one, you know it's going to give you something very general, spit it out. If you don't have the context, the role, the understanding, if you don't put those type of proper things in, they're coming like, well, this is just like random stuff of how to come on the internet. I don't want to use this, right? So they become resistant to change because they don't believe they can be replaced, or they don't think they can actually ideate. They just think it's, oh, this is autocomplete on steroids. That's all this is, right? They're very resistant to change. So that's one big issues in AI and project management is because, again, how do you convince stakeholders who are resistant to change, although through doing demos, that the model is actually really smart and actually working those type of advancements. Again, balancing automation and human involvement. If your whole project is about automating a task, and then you have saying, okay, then you have four human in the loops, then you're not really automating a task. You're just creating more work for those involved. Ensure that everyone has adequate training and support during the projects. One of the biggest also is addressing cost considerations. A lot of people don't know how much it costs to run something like this. This is something I teach in Gen AI 102 in terms of salary, cost productions, cost of hosting a vector store, the cost of running an LLM on a month and determining how that is. There is a lot of cost that needs to be addressed of doing this. Number eight, maybe there's technical limitations in the sense that most people want to use LLMs for forecasting, but LLMs are not made for forecasting. You have a really smart director that like, you know what, like let's use AI for everything. Like I need to build a stock forecaster and use an LLM to forecast what should be done. They don't know that there's a limitation that the LLMs are only token predictors of actually what's the next word to be based off the data they're trained on. They're not meant to reason really well in terms of for an example, like the LLMs do reason and do things out, but in the sense that they're not going to go and say, okay, this person wants me to predict stock. I'm going to build out an LLM forecaster, like a stock forecaster in my mind and then input his stocks in my mind and then print out a prediction and then from that prediction give him what he wants. It's not going to do that. LM will then look back and say, okay, well, based off historical trends on this stock I have in my memory, it shows it has a 0.6% increase. So therefore, you shouldn't be investing in this stock because it's 0.6 increase consistently over the last 5 months. Well, that's all it would say. But it won't do an actual forecasting model inside the neural network, right? So most people don't understand that and don't understand the mathematical processes of the LLM hesitations. This is why tools in the front end, you'll see you have to say, use, I want to understand a future stock predictor, but use Python to build this out. You have to be specific on that. And then you'll see an example in ChatGPT. It will then open up a canvas and start building out code. And then it's like, okay, run this code, then tell me what it says. So that's where you'll see the difference between how to handle LLMs in terms of understanding these technical limitations. And nine is to, like I said, manage those expectations. Once you sort of say, okay, You need to understand that LLMs can only do this, and you understand there is a degree of risk. You need to understand that if OpenAI goes down and you're only focusing on LLMs, you need to have a backup LLM in case it goes down because that's going to affect that's really going to affect how well your model's doing on that and on expectations, right? So again, when you're doing these project managements, it's always good to ensure you have these open communications and show them what can really happen with an LLM. So, and part of a COE, a strategy could be done is to help develop AI literacy. And this is something that you guys are doing right now. You're taking this course. So you are now having a proper understanding of what is really the current limitations of an AI, what can it do, what can it cannot do, and what other different projects can be done. But a lot of people aren't taking those initiatives, right? They don't understand what is the hardware that needs to be done, what information they need to be reading on, or or how they're doing new content or doing safety or they're doing problem solving. Like how can this really be encouraged, right? So um, the whole point of AI literacy is to promote collaboration and knowledge share. Again, you can have people sign up for workshops that they have something that they built on, sharing their things that they build, explore new ideas. A lot of VPs, what they do is when they start getting into, they have issues and problems they need to solve, they do hackathons. So let's say in your department, there are five main issues. Instead of having one person work on it, they stop a day and say everyone's going to work on this project as a hackathon and build it out and see who can win that way, right? And then you can have cross departmental teams leverage their expertise for richer solutions. Although let's say let's say you're into finance and you're trying to do it yourself and you can't really get it done, but luckily for you, on that hackathon, on your team, there could be someone from IT, and this person has lots of deep experience using AI, and they teach you about a new framework that you used, right? So leveraging different expertise and richer solutions can really help push those literacies going forward because now that you've seen it done, that's something you're like, oh, I should use that for something else, right? So then you increase these knowledge for a company. The only people who win is your company in the sense that because you're able to see different solutions, you're able to work on them. It increases that AI literacy in your company and help improve its efficiencies. So again, the whole point of this innovation literacy and framework is to encourage experimentation and risk taking, develop a sandbox for people to work in and not touch really production grade information and do incentives, right? Of course, it's not just good enough like, hey, I want you to work on this hackathon. It's like, well, I don't want to work in a hackathon. I have so much work I want to do. But maybe there is an incentive bonus. So those who can get that gets a certain monetary reward or gift card or recognition throughout the company, right? And even though even here it's like offer development, right? Offer massive opportunities for those who are driving innovation. So all part of this is part of the strategy that the COE actually thinks about. And a lot of people aren't thinking about these things, right? Some people are thinking about these in sort of an individual process of like one VP might be doing this, but maybe another company isn't. And that's really what the COE is trying to do. Centralize it for all departments, centralize this for everything so it can actually push forward innovation. So this one again is measuring success in iterations. So again, track your projects. Always have KPIs. One of the bad things about POCs, people are like, well, just start this POC. Well, how do I know this POC is gonna be successful? Oh, if it works. But that's not good enough. Like just seeing if something works is not good enough to be delivered an AI project. You need to have a really good project charter that says, hey, if your POC can achieve doing this, your POC can achieve doing this, your POC can achieve doing this, then that's how we measure success of the project. You need to have clear definitions of what your POC will look like. If you don't have a clear definition of POC, go back to your boss, go back to your director, like, I'm not going to work on this project unless there's clear indications of how I know I'm going to be successful. Because just because you got it working doesn't mean you're successful. Because your model could be working, but it could be completely wrong. So how you're doing those evaluations, and how you're going to be doing that. So again, if to set yourself up for success, always have KPIs of success while doing these POCs. And again, when you're doing these project charters and you're developing a quick POC, it's the impact of the business process, right? Again, the ROI and the impact will always be the top reasons of why you're gonna be working on something. And then I think lastly, I want to talk about is how to really measure maturity in your business. So this is based off other center of excellences. You need to look at how really where your company is. So again, if you're this is something you can bring up to your company if you're not doing this, or you really understand where your company is looking at this framework. So if you're looking around and you really and you talk to other people in your company, and you have a good visibility of what's happening, if people are just doing individual projects and there's no centralized team working on this, then you guys are at level one in terms of maturity in your company in terms of using AI. Um, if there's actually teams now going in and working on projects together on AI projects, and you know that for sure, then your guys are at level two. In terms that you're having teams going in there and developing these things. Now, if you're in your company, you should be able to see this. You have programs saying, hey, we have an AI program we're going to be developing. We have hackathons. We have AI literacy. Then you guys are at level three in terms of maturity in AI. You're slowly defining different literacies. You're slowly defining different projects in terms of where the information is going from there. Four is managed portfolio. So it means do you have something that's managing all the AI things are happening, right? So going back to that COE, is there a way we can see where people working on previous projects on? Is there a way that is there a way to see all the recs are being stored here? Here's famous system prompts that everyone is working on. Here's something that someone built for your Confluence page. It's a place where you can see where you're managing all your AI projects and looking at it and be able to see. Then you're sort of level four. And level five is optimize enterprise. So ensuring that everywhere, every single company, every single department is using AI at its max. And having something that is, example, in this picture here is sort of a level five, where you can have AI ready workforce that is using AI. That you're having something that does a rapid deployment in AI, like having everything sort of using artificial intelligence to sort of optimize everything in the departments, right? Every single department is using AI to optimize it. There's AI product delivery, there's center of excellence, there are AI factory that you know that's happening at your company. Then you're looking at an optimized enterprise that's sort of mature on that scale. So again, I leave this last part for you guys to look at and analyze your own departments, your own companies, look in terms of maturity and look at those gaps and find ways how you can fill those gaps yourself. Because this course is not only simply about learning about AI, but how can it really help you in your career and how can it really help in your career? Maybe there's something your boss doesn't know. Again, maybe your boss hasn't taken any AI literacy courses, like I said before, and he doesn't know that these gaps are done. He doesn't know about AI governance and risks that come with it, or doesn't know about the limitations of certain AI and what they should be looking at and developing for, and how you can sort of streamline and work together rather than separately on AI projects. So again, this is where today's lesson sort of stops in the sense that think about your projects that you're working on and are they really set up for success? Um, and this brings me to I'll stop sharing for a second, to one article that I really shared with the teams before, um, and that I want you guys to think about. Let's see here. I'll put this in the Zoom chat. I'll share my screen on this side. And something that I want you guys to think about is as simple as this one. Dear IT departments, please stop trying to build your own RAG. And what it's trying to say here is, look, like you would never in a million years build your own CRM system or your own custom CMS. So why are people trying to build their own LLMs and they're trying to build their own parts, right? So So again, here it says, everywhere I look, I see IT departments convincing themselves that building your own RAG-based chatbot is somehow different. It's not, it's actually worse. So this person gives a little bit more of a realistic view of people trying to build something out. So let me paint you a picture. Last week, I watched a team of brilliant engineers demo their shiny new RAG application, all built in-house. They were proud, they were excited. They had vector embeddings, they had prompt engineering, but they didn't know what was coming next. So it always ends up the same way. Burned out engineers, blown budgets, and a CTO wondering why they just didn't buy a solution in the first place. The it looks simple trap. I really get it. So some people think that a RAG is really simple. You have a vector store database, you add it to your LLM and you're done. You throw in some open source tools like some LangChain, and then you're good to go, right? So again, this article goes around that it's a lot more than that. Because remember we talked about that framework, guardrails in place, evaluations, what to do when your LM starts hallucinating. So let me tell you about so this talks about this person's one company. Their simple RAG project started in January. By March, they had one full-time engineer debugging hallucinations and accuracy problems, one data guy dealing with ETL ingestion problems, one full-time DevOps engineer fighting with scalability and infrastructure issues, and a one very unhappy CTO that looks like a budget that had tripled. And the worst part was that I was watching them slowly realize that what they looked like a 2 month project was actually going to become an ongoing nightmare. So one thing they didn't account for was that documents and knowledge base complexities. So they're trying to ingest different various sources like SharePoint, Google Drive, and websites, document formats of all sort of PDF issues or trying to import it, and accurate issues in productions, hallucinations, response qualities, etc. So what this person was trying to show here is an example of rather than just having a direct um, so instead of just having a simple LLM, there's a lot more, right? And going back to the AI engineer, AI platform person who has experience working in the past, knows that as you build out RAGs, there are going to be issues that the LLM won't choose the right chunk from your vector database all the time. And sometimes if there isn't the right chunks in place, the LLM can even hallucinate a chunk that's not even in there. So therefore, when the person answer response, they can get a hallucination. So there's a way to do it. This one they're showing here is a citation to make sure have a citation from the model to before a response to actually go back to the chunk and cite it. And if it doesn't cite it properly, to go back and redo the whole thing over again. Same thing going with an anti-hallucination algorithm that it actually has the chunks decide from the chunks which one's actually the best one before giving it back to the model. And again, like I said before, there's a way to grab the question's query, break it down to semantic keywords, user intents, and look at the query and before sending it to the embeddings as different fishing hooks. But this is something again that most people who think of building a RAG simple are not thinking about because they don't have that much experience or had tried building it in the past before. So again, this person talks about that these people in IT just thought it would be something simple. They got hallucinations. The response quality wasn't doing good. Um, the data capture they had wasn't working as well because but getting data into chunks in your vector database is more than just grabbing text, throwing it in there. You need to understand if it needs to be OCR'd, if it has too much text, if there's tables, there's PDFs that are breaking up the document, right? There needs to be a whole way of strategy of how you're going to handle the documents that are being sent in there. Security issues, data leakage, etc. Each one of these could be its own project, its own gotchas. Each one can blow up your timeline. So here's the cost that no one talks about when you're developing these objects is that we have the talent, we have the tools, and open source is free. So that's most people have that mistake while building these AI projects. So let me break down the real cost for your free RAG system. like I said before, to open a vector store database, there is a cost of hosting chunks. It doesn't matter where you are. There are some that can do free hosting, but only up to a certain size. To actually go against the model and to ask questions to LLM, there is that model inference cost, the environmental cost to run the compute of testing it, production environments, backup system, monitoring systems. All those are just infrastructure cost. And then there's personnel cost. An ML engineer could be 150, 250 a year, DevOps engineer. You have these different salaries coming in for these projects, and then operational costs even after that. So who's monitoring the project afterwards? Who's doing the security updates? Who's doing the model upgrades? Who's doing the data cleaning? Who's doing the documentation? Who's going to train new members how to use the model properly? Who's doing compliance audits, etc. Right? So why would you want to go and start building something that people already developed at a fraction of the cost, right? So um, something here also that I think I want to highlight is that every new document you add to your knowledge base is a potential security risk. Every prompt is an attack vector. Every response needs to be screened. It's not just building a secure system, it's about maintaining security in an environment that changes daily. Um, if you use so it talks about even more about it. It talks about LangChain. I'm not sure how many people use LangChain to sort of develop their models before in tutorials, but it's actually a little bit of a nightmare in the sense that if you don't have version control of your LangChain, they rewrite their whole functions every new version. So so if you look at week four, a complete rewrite, you're using LangChain version 2.3.1. We have new LangChain version 3.0.0 as you import your new models coming in. But guess what? That import that run your LLM model is now called run underscore LLM underscore output. So when you run your model again, your model just crashes because the functions that are in the new database aren't working anymore. So then you fix it, you change it to the new version of LangChain, but guess what? The new version of LangChain wasn't tested properly, and therefore hallucinations are now more prominent in your RAG, and you don't know why. And although you're using the same framework that you had before, so then you go back and revert it to the older one, but guess what? You spent a whole entire day checking LangChain, spent the whole other half going back, reverting, checking the whole compliance issue. You spent 8 hours doing that, times that by your salary, right? You spent $600, $700 on something that's completely unnecessary for your company. That's something you need to do, right? So not only that LangChain might give you nightmares, there's daily maintenance tasks, weekly maintenance tasks, monthly maintenance tasks, expertise gaps as well. And something that people don't know that RAG isn't just engineering. There's, like I said before, there's LLM ops, there's RAG pipeline management, version controls for your models, accuracy optimization, how to scale it, how to do proper chunking based off this as well. And really, the RAG expertise comes from people who know how to set up guardrails, how to set up that anti-hallucin optimization, how to do context window optimizations. Remember when we looked at this in week two, and you can adjust your K, adjust your top P parameters. Most software engineers who haven't taken these LM literacy courses don't know that you can tell the model to only put a max context window of it, but the model that's not really driving the model to do that, right? You need to go and adjust it in the LM parameters before that even happens. You also need to have something that logs and monitors all your responses from your LLMs. Who's doing the API management? Who's watching? People aren't going crazy overboard of that, right? Who's optimizing, deleting old data in your vector store databases because you got new data now. There are all this information that needs to be think about as you do and develop these AI productionalized systems that most people don't know and think about, and they think it really just I can just do an LLM, make it productionized, and that's it. And that's something you need to look at and understand that it's a little bit more than that, right? So this is simple, just a pipeline of getting your data in to where your information comes from, If you have PDF, you need to develop a custom PDF parsing. If you have HTML, custom HTML parser, CSV, etc., that extracts the text in order to go to your vector store database. No matter what, you need to have something that can look at all those different ways and do it, right? So if you don't have the right expertise on your team, and you're having someone who just want to experiment and try it, again, do the POC, do something quick and easy. But remember, if you don't have the expertise, it might be better to bring in consultants or to buy a software that's already done, like Microsoft Copilot agents have have that already built in. You can simply just do drag and drop connected to the databases that you need, and it already has these citations, these built-in things on the back end to go in and look at it to do a better RAG chunk itself, right? So if you wanted to enable this for individuals who don't have that much experience, think of think of what you're really trying to achieve and go from there, right? So the bottom line is that instead of thinking if it's something that's super easy and you're in charge of an IT department and you're like, well, my team can do this, again, think of those salaries, think of who's coming in, think of how much time is being spent on it, and really think is it really worth it? And they're not really bringing that value in, then maybe it's time to bring in external workers or to bring in buy your own software that has these AI agent builders in. So again, that's today's class in terms of understanding the center of excellences, how to really think about how you can enable this in your own workplace and really be the aviators from that. So I know we talked a lot today, and we have about 15 minutes left, but I do really want to talk about the capstone project that's sort of left on here. So I know we have about 7 people, I think 7 people left on this side. I'm gonna probably ask one-on-one. Do you guys? So I'll probably go through Bhaskar. Do you have any idea in terms of your capstone project of anything you want to build out that you want to share and present for next week? Or have you thought of anything yet, Bhaskar?
Haven't thought of.
So yeah, so
Yeah, I'll have something probably this week.
okay, awesome. Yeah, so remember guys,
Check.
so don't be afraid if you think of if you don't have anything you want to build from code, you can still use the examples I put into the GitHub. Just change it to something that you think would be useful for you. And that's pretty much what it is, right? Like it doesn't have to be something complicated. You don't have to do something with a huge front end. Um, if it's something that's simple, that hey, actually I used this and I just adjusted this, like that's to me is a huge win because then you went in and you played around and you saw how to use AI from there. So, right, thank you, Bhaskar, for letting me know that you could have something, you may have something for next week. How about you, Mahesh? How are you doing on that road?
Same here, Lewis. I don't have anything. I didn't think of anything, but I'm just trying to see if I can find something which is in line with what I'm planning to do at my work. So that way, at least I could, one shot, two birds kind of thing. Yeah, but yeah, next week I'll be taking some time off. I'll be on the road, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, no worries. So again, if you feel like you can't build it out, but you want to have an idea, like, hey, this is my idea, this is what I want to do, and these are the type of ADA things, maybe in that class we can all work together and find out solutions for you to work what will work best as well. So as long as you come with an idea of what you want to do and build out for the future, and if you haven't built out something, this is something we can also do as well. So thank you. So Pramida, how about you? Anything that you thought you can be working on for next Saturday for your capstone? Sorry if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. Is it Pramida? Pramida? Maybe my voice made her maybe my voice made her go to sleep. So I was talking too much today. How about Shashrika? How about yourself?
S- uh, For me, I don't have any idea, but I wanted to have more on validations on the result because to match with my profession, like I'm a automation engineer, QA automation engineer. So I wanted to build something small, but wanted to see the validations, how I can use like the LLMs to itself validate the results that I got from the RAG, whatever I've designed.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe on Wednesday, if you have time to join the office hours, we can work on something like a quick solution for you, and that
Yeah.
way on Saturday you can see how well it actually works off that.
Sounds good. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
No worries. And Pramita, don't worry if your mic's not working. Maybe you can just write on the chat whatever you feel like you want to share with the team for next Saturday. And Shushma, how about yourself? Anything you feel like
I haven't thought
there?
of anything, and also I'll be traveling out of country tomorrow. So
Oh,
I'm not sure if I'll be able to attend the next week session as well.
okay, no worries. How about yourself, VJ?
Yeah, actually, last class I did not attend, and I did not got a chance to catch up on that. So yeah, my first goal would be to catch up on the session. So, and then like even yeah, I have issues even with running this previous programs also. Probably this Wednesday session, maybe I'll take some help from you. In the meantime, I'll try to watch those missed session. And regarding the capstone, maybe I'll come up with an idea, but not the project. I'll try to come up by next Saturday.
Yeah, that works. That works as well, right? And the whole point of it is next Saturday, this time is all yours.
Yeah.
So take advantage of it and try to see it from there, right? From that side. So no, that's
Sure.
great.
Yeah. I tried both in the Google Colab and also the same thing that visual. Uh, yeah, both of them. I mean, I was not successful in running the previous co code. So probably, I mean, I think one time we both troubleshooted it together, I guess, right? So
Yeah, I found
yeah.
that 1.5 Pro is still available, and when I used that, it worked. Instead of using the 2.5 Pro, just use the 1.5 Pro,
Oh,
and it
1 point.
it
Okay.
solved the issue. Yeah.
Okay, sure. I mean, yeah, today your session did explain like so about this backward compatibility. Sometime it won't be properly tested, so the models might not work, right? So that could be a classical example.
Yeah, and that code was just created 6 months ago, right? So that's how fast these models are advancing and changing. So
Yeah, yes, sure. Yeah, definitely. I'll watch the video and I might ask some questions in the Wednesday session.
yep. So yeah, so just so you know, last Saturday there was no class last Saturday.
There
So
was no class the Saturday before also.
Saturday.
Actually, I missed it.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Sounds good. Okay, no worries.
yes.
All right, thanks so much, VJ. All right, so thank you, everyone. We ended a little early today, but I can stay back for 7 minutes if people have questions. But thanks so much for joining on today's last week 5, and hope to hear. I'm excited to hear what ideas you guys have for on Wednesday, on Saturday, and see you from there.
Louis,
Thank you.
sorry. When we run this, some of these queries, right? So I'm keep running into this daily limit or kind of a rate limit issue. How do I get around that? So do I have to have any paid license or?
Yeah, it's unfortunately, so we're using the Google's free version, so it's giving free APIs. So this is why
Right.
you to the rate limits. But try to use if you're running to rate limits, try to use like a smaller model like Gemini Flash, anything like that, because those have they have larger. You're able to use those models more than the Gemini Pro one. So if you're running into the issue of getting that, then just use the Gemini Flash versions, like the smaller ones, and those would probably be able to run and not get rate limited that way.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, everyone. I think that's if anyone has some more questions, then go enjoy your Saturday. Thank you for everyone for joining me today.
Thank you.
All right, bye everyone.
Thank you, Luis.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Louis. Thanks.